Well, joining us live now, as we always do on a Friday, the Shadow Minister for Industry and Innovation, Ed Husic. Ed, more than half the country once again in lockdown. The absolute state of things at the moment.
I think at this stage, well, first, g'day, Pete. At this stage, if you look at the way that things are headed in Greater New South Wales, Greater Sydney, I should say, the concern I've got looking at the numbers is that even if we effectively had halving each week of the numbers that get announced on a daily basis from here to the end of August, it's hard to see how we get out of lockdown. And what that means is we've really got to focus on a number of things. One is making sure that the lockdown's effective. Two is clearly getting supply up. Three is overcoming vaccine hesitancy. Four is to be able to effectively work within communities and have a integrated public health campaign where the federal, state, local governments are going right into neighbourhoods to try and overcome that hesitancy and find ways of boosting vaccination rates. And I've called for in my area an increasing number of vaccine hubs. And finally, we've just got to remove some of the hoops that we're encountering that people feel like they can't get financial support out of the government. And as a result, because they're thinking about how they'll pay the bills, are going out, moving around and working. So I think we can get through this, but it is going to need something a lot better than what we've got at the moment in terms of coordination.
Well, you've got the New South Wales Premier at the moment who's pivoting the argument towards vaccines, and then you've got the Prime Minister who's moving the argument back towards lockdowns. Meanwhile, you've got people, the punters, who are stuck in the middle.
That's right. And I think there's a combination actually of both. I think the lockdown, obviously we need to ensure that people are staying put and not moving around. But the New South Wales Premier is right. We do need to boost vaccination rates. I had a meeting last night with GPs where it was suggested, based on the stats that they'd seen, that at current rates, even if we got to October, you'd see some parts of inner city Sydney get 100% vaccination rates, but in Mount Druitt, it would hover around 10%. That's a really big issue for me as a local representative, that we don't have higher vaccination levels. It's why I've written to the New South Wales government with the Mayor of Blacktown saying open up vaccination hubs in Mount Druitt, Emerton and in Woodcroft. I'm still waiting for a response. Maybe they've come back, I don't know. But what I'm saying as a local representative is I will throw all my weight behind a coordinated effort by federal, state and local governments, particularly in our part of Western Sydney, to get through this. But it's going to need some energy and resources and, importantly, supply of vaccine to make that happen.
And should that be moved from other regions in the state? And your colleague Joel Fitzgibbon, absolutely filthy that vaccines were moved from the Hunter region towards Sydney. That's now being reversed. That is part of the problem, isn't it? What's your take on that?
I think that we should not have been put, I've said this last week, we should not have been put in a spot where the regions are seeing vaccine supply go from them to come into our part of Greater Sydney. I understand the rationale behind that, which is to get Year 12 students vaccinated so that in one of the biggest tests of their young lives, the HSC, they can go ahead and do that confidently. We should not have been put in this position where we are making hard choices like this that affect communities. The reality is that the vaccine rollout program, either in terms of obtaining supply or manufacturing mRNA locally, which we now have learned is going to take another 2 years potentially for that to occur. This is really a sad story about how bad that national vaccine rollout program by the government has failed, and we've got to get it back on track.
Well, I mean, it is picking up in certain areas. In other parts of Sydney, you're getting the double doses up 20, 30, 40% in some places at the moment. But like you said before, parts of Western Sydney still very much lagging behind. If that continues, is your feeling that lockdowns in Sydney at least will continue right up until Christmas and beyond?
My worry is that we will be going longer on lockdown beyond what has been stated as August. If you look at the numbers at the moment, as I said a few moments ago, even if they halved every single week, I just can't see how the government in New South Wales will allow lockdown to be lifted. And we can't have these variations in rates. I saw with the Doherty Institute findings this week, or the report that was released this week, you saw in stark terms, Peter, you could do literally as a circle of Sydney, you could halve it and you could see the difference between vaccination rates in the east and the west. And I don't want it suggested that it's because people out here don't want to get vaccinated, because I am seeing people line up for both vaccines and testing. It is an issue of supply out in our area. GPs are telling me this directly, and we do need to counter that. I definitely urge, if I can say, to all my fellow Western Sydney residents, please go out and get vaccinated. This is really important. This is literally the fight of our lives. And certainly we need to do that, but we need to all work together. And that's why I think the feds, state and local governments and MPs, regardless of political hue, working together on this, we'll get through it, but it has to happen much more effectively.
You saw SPC, the first cab off the rank yesterday, deciding that all of its workers need to be vaccinated. Do you support this, and do you believe that vaccinations should be mandated in the workplace?
I think it would be good to have a coordinated position on that. Instead of having individual businesses go out and do it alone, and that we can bring people along with us on that. But I also understand businesses have been very keen to step up, and I'm very grateful for the business community saying, look, involve us, engage us in the national vaccine program, and we will be a willing partner to make this happen. It took a heck of a long time, Pete, for that to happen. In fact, I understood that industry had asked last December for this to be applied in a much more effective and energetic way. It took a while for that to happen. It's happening now. Business has got a role to play. Let's coordinate it so that everyone's on the same page.
But you'd be for that?
Well, I think if business can pitch in and help in terms of vaccine, yes, but it's hard for me to see, in the absence of effective vaccine rollouts, for you to penalise people and say you can't come into work because you haven't been vaccinated. This is why I'm saying it needs to be coordinated. We need to have an effective national vaccine rollout program where business is stepping in to help out and where people are getting vaccinated. And I think people are starting to learn that, or twig that unless we get vaccination levels higher, that there'll be issues where businesses will make calls on the basis of workplace health and safety that they're going to do what SPC said. But really, we've got to get that supply and vaccination rate out there.
Okay, Ed Husic, good to chat. I'll talk to you soon.